Okay, in the second module, you need to make a decision up front here whether you even need to listen to what I'm going to be saying. If you are fantastic looking, with the most winning personality ever on the face of the earth, and the ability to charm everyone you meet in 10 or 15 seconds, then really you can ignore all the content here. Otherwise, we need to talk about handling complex stakeholder situations with multiple executives trying to influence your project and having a diverse set of requirements, needs, and political objectives. And we need to be able to sort all this out. So if you're not a movie star with a wonderful personality, then we need some advanced techniques, and that's what we're going to talk about in this chapter. We're going to talk about how to analyze the position of each decision maker in the process, and identify what their high pressure points are, the performance pressures they feel, which translate into requirements. Obviously, if we understand the performance pressures they're under, we can do a lot better job judging the requirements they're asking us for. We also need to assess their attitude toward you, the programmer, portfolio manager, and projects in general. What's their experience? How are they used to dealing with projects? What role are they accustomed to playing? And how do we change that? And finally, we'll talk about techniques to assess the personality types of the executives you have to deal with, because here, one size does not fit all. You're going to be spending time dealing with each of these individually, and you need to be able to identify their personality type and then also know what techniques in communication you should use with each of the different personality types, because you have to persuade and influence all of these executive stakeholders. So, it's a lot to cover. I'm sorry you're not Hollywood gorgeous, but we'll move on now with the new techniques. As you can see behind me, we're on the shores, actually the canyon of the Wailea River here in Kapaha in Kauai, Hawaii. You see the river flowing and the enormous amount of water flowing down, which approximates the quantity of alcohol that the camera team consumed last evening. That may sound innocent, you know, after a hard working day out having 1 or 2 or 30 cocktails, but it's not so innocent when someone like myself gets a call at 2:30 in the morning to go to the Kapaha jail and assist in the release of some of the camera crew. So they're all shamefaced today, particularly the short, mouthy ones, who gave the police quite an argument last night. Anyway, let's move on. The situation you're dealing with, controlling the portfolio or a program full of other projects, is you have this big entity you're trying to manage, and each of the component projects in it, in the program or the portfolio, has their own set of stakeholders, their own achievement network, which you learned about in the first module, their own measure of success, high-level deliverables that those stakeholders want, and strategic business result. And you're going to have some of these stakeholders playing a role in multiple of your projects. So having sound strategies for dealing with them is obviously a critical area of success, and frankly, executive support, or the lack of it, is the #1 cause of failure for large programs or portfolio management efforts. It's not a technical project management job. It is a highly political job that requires a lot of interpersonal skills. Let's talk about some of them. You have, as program or portfolio manager, a position with each of the executive decision makers in the organization. And that position is the result of a couple of different factors. First of all, each executive has their own buying perceptions of you. In other words, what they think you can do for them, what sort of a role they think you should play in the organization, where they think you can make your maximum contribution, and how they should work with you. And that buying perception is a key element after you've identified your stakeholders, who they are, and then we want to make an initial and ongoing assessment of what their buying perception of you is. Do they think of you as a clerk who's keeping track of finish dates on projects but has no strategic value to contribute? Or do they think of you as a partner in helping them achieve their strategic objectives? And there are a number of positions between those two. Obviously, if they see you as an order taker, as a commodity, anybody could do your job, you're going to have trouble getting time from them. If they see you as a strategic partner, you're going to be able to do a great job integrating all of the projects that you're doing for them into one very effective strategic whole. So their buying perception of you is critical. Just like any salesperson, and that's what you are, has to have a good buying perception from the potential customer, or you won't sell anything. The second element of your strategic position is those decision makers' performance pressures. In other words, what are they feeling pressure to achieve? Is the vice president of sales under a great deal of pressure to improve the profitability of what's sold, or the total revenue, or to penetrate new markets? We don't make assumptions about these things. We find out in conversation with them what their performance pressures are, because if we can position projects to relieve those performance pressures, we improve our strategic position with that decision maker. Sounds pretty simple, but portfolio managers violate those ideas all the time. They somehow think that the executive decision makers should treat them as equals, but if those decision makers have no appreciation of the value of a portfolio manager, you're down at the bottom of the perception list. And likewise, if you can't identify their performance pressures, you can't design projects to relieve those pressures, and one project after another is going to fail. So at this level, managing your position with the various decision makers is one of the most important things you're going to do. One of the chief ways an unhappy executive stakeholder, in case you don't know it, Kauai has 58,000 chickens that are loose, running loose. I don't think they're a protected species, but they're all over the place, and the inhabitants here go to great lengths to protect all these chickens. And so you'll hear the crowing in the background, and that happens all hours of the day from anywhere on the island. So please become accustomed to it. One of the ways we improve our position with a decision maker is to work with them doing strategic planning, because that means we need to uncover the performance pressures they feel and identify achievements that will relieve that performance pressure. And if we can do that, we improve our position with that decision maker. So it's a vital thing that we are talking about end results in their business. Let me say that again, because particularly for people with a lot of technical background, this is a real change. We're not talking about the technical details of the work you and your project managers and the teams will do. We're talking about identifying strategic business results in the user's business. So we don't talk about the design of the new facility for the operating department. We talk about the fact that they're going to have an assembly line that can put out 500 units a day of the company's product. The design of the structure is tactical planning. Executives don't like to hear that. They're not interested in it, particularly as you get into more and more technical detail. Strategic planning is where we talk about, once the structure is built, what are we going to use it to achieve? What's the business outcome? And of course, the value here is if I can identify that 500 units a day will relieve this operations VP's performance pressures, then I can design the whole project to focus on delivering 500 units a day. If I'm doing tactical planning and all I know is that the operations VP wants a new manufacturing building, we're going to build the building or build the software or build the procedures and changes and think we're finished, and we've done nothing to relieve that executive's performance pressure. So that's why at the program manager and portfolio level, you are not doing tactical planning. You are doing strategic planning about business outcomes in the user or decision maker's division. Just to be sure I've made the point here, when we're doing tactical planning with an executive, we're talking about the features of the system or the building that we're going to build for them. We're talking about the technical details and specifications of that product and how we're going to build, what response time, what noise insulation in the office space. We're talking about that kind of stuff, and we're talking about our competency to deliver those things, how much we know about noise abatement in the workplace, how much we know about ergonomic design of office spaces and cubicles. Interesting technical details, but not to an executive. That's not at a strategic level. We're going to find out that that executive doesn't want to waste time meeting with us anymore. They will delegate it to a subordinate, maybe a couple levels down, who actually has interest in that stuff. The executive doesn't, and we lose our ability to get time from them if we focus on tactical planning. We leave these sessions with all this technical mumbo jumbo, and all the executive is thinking, I never want to sit on an airplane seat next to this person ever again. And you don't get the time. Contrast that with strategic planning. You're doing less talking. You want to ask questions that get the executive talking about the long-term achievements he wants to see for his division or her division, and how he or she will measure those achievements. We're identifying performance pressures. And if there's a lot of pressure from the board to increase sales, well, we want to know that, because we want to craft achievements that relieve that performance pressure. So in strategic planning, we are talking about the executive's business and what achievements they need in that business. In tactical planning, we're talking about technical details. In strategic planning, you ask some open-ended questions and let the executives talk, which by and large they are happy to do. In tactical planning, you are doing a lot of talking about the technical details. We avoid tactical and try and position ourselves as doing strategic planning with these executives, because that's what lets you get more time with them, and more time lets you improve your position. Okay. You have a meeting with one of the influential executives in your organization. Now, you may be new to your portfolio or program management job, or you may have been doing it for years and have just read this book and taken this course. But anyway, you sit down, and this executive starts talking about the new Millennium project that has to be finished by 12/31, and it has to be new software, and there has to be a new position that we achieve for the organization's projects in the market. And the executive is rolling and listing off all the things like new advertising programs, redesign of 6 of our products, improvements in the customer service department. These are all the things, tactical things, the executive wants you to do. You ask a question like, well, what's the big purpose? And the executive says, well, I want you to be finished by 12/31, and I want you to improve customer service and have new software and have the redesign of 6 new products. And you quickly realize you have a lousy strategic position for this program. Now, maybe you're saying, wait a minute, our strategic position isn't so bad. I'm talking to an executive about a project the executive wants. We're making good progress. I'm finding out about the things, the requirements the executive has. We're right smack in the middle of tactical planning, aren't we? let's assess our position first. How many decision makers have we identified that this project's going to influence? The answer is 1. Do we have any performance pressures we've identified? Yeah, the due date at the executive. We have that one. There's nothing else that's measurable. And last, we haven't talked about any measured achievements. How good does customer service have to be? How fast does the new system have to be? None of those things are in achievement form, so our position is indeed lousy, even though there are a whole lot of portfolio and program managers who are accustomed to just that kind of discussion. They also probably have 70% failure rate in their projects, and all the executives hate them. The first thing we have to do here to improve this position is to figure out who the decision makers are. Now, this executive we're talking to is certainly presenting him or herself as the executive buyer, the one who's going to buy this project, possibly sell it in the organization, but this executive is the one who's going to give you the go-ahead on the project. That's just one of the decision makers, though, we have to be aware of. And of course, there can be more than one executive who is the buyer. And we need to very carefully identify who's in that central decision maker role. And then there's another group of decision makers who are user decision makers. They're the people who are actually going to implement what the project delivers in their departments, in their customer service department, in their operating department, in their inventory control department. So understanding their performance pressures is also important, but first, of course, we have to identify them. And the third ring, if you will, of decision makers is our technical decision makers. And they're just going to be thrilled to have those detailed, techno-geeky kind of conversations with you about the things they are focused on, which is technical details, but that is the only group of these three, technical, user, and executives, that's going to be interested in tactical planning. The rest are going to be talking about outcomes in their area of responsibility. So we have to ask the executive questions about who these people are, who the user decision makers are, secure approval to go talk to them, and that's not usually a problem. We'll also find out about who the technical decision makers are, and these may be buyers in purchasing. They may be interface people in the operating departments who deal with the facilities or IT project teams because the users don't want to talk with them. So we have to identify who these people are and set up times to go out and meet with them to classify the performance pressures they feel. We also need to come back with this first executive that we're talking to and get them to talk about what happens after the program's over. What operating results do they need to see to call the project a success? Those are the measure of success and high-level achievement numbers we need to have to carry our planning forward. So that first session with the executive, we need to try and stop them on the list of to-dos and get them talking about end results and improvements in performance. And a lot of times we may get some pushback, particularly if you've been around for a while and have never asked questions like that. They're going to say, well, what business is that of yours? If the executive is used to program managers or project managers who never ask those questions, they'll say the same thing. And you need to come back and be very persuasive with the argument. There's no way I can give you what you want if I don't know what it is. That's a very good question and a very reasonable question to ask, and you can follow on with variants of it, like I can do a much better job if I understand what you're looking for as an end result and how you're going to measure it. And if you get that, well, I'll see it when I see it, and I'll know if it's what I want. Then you're going to say, well, boy, we're going to waste a lot of time on this project if we don't know what the target is. We're going to be aiming all over. You need to have that discussion. It's a little bit of pushback, but frankly, your strategic decision-making position is so bad that you have no chance of succeeding on this project anyway. So why not ask some very reasonable questions? Okay, we've done our best to identify the decision makers, and of course that process never ends. It's ongoing as we uncover more and more people who have a stake in the project, who will be influenced by it. But our next topic is going to talk to those decision makers, people who can influence the decision-making process, and talk to them about their pressure points. Now, usually it doesn't work to walk into their office and say, tell me what's really bothering you. What's got you up late at night unable to sleep? That you usually don't get much of a response except out. So we need to use information we gather in the grapevine in the organization. So you're sitting around the cafeteria hunting for performance pressures, and you hear somebody say, boy, customer service really screwed up last month. And you're casually, but like a lion jumping on meat, saying, oh, what happened? What was the problem? And they tell you that it was hold time was too long, or sales is really complaining about how many wrong answers customer service gives. Or you may hear that the billing department is complaining about wrong price quotes that sales is turning out. And you're filing these away because these are performance pressure possibilities at least, and that's the way you find out about them. And then when you go into the customer service manager's office, you're saying, well, now, are there some issues? Are you looking to make some improvements in how long people are on hold? Or are you trying to improve the accuracy of the information they are giving out to customers? Or when you walk into the sales VP's office, you're asking questions like, well, now, we've talked about this project, but is this going to address the issue of salespeople using the wrong quotes on products? And you're asking those questions, and usually when you've hit a performance pressure, you get a very strong reaction. People are generally pleased when you're aware enough about what's going on. Actually, pleased is the wrong word. When you know about the things that their boss is screaming to them about, your position's a little different than being an order taker, isn't it? And if you store up that knowledge about performance pressures and categorize it by the decision maker who may be influenced by it, that's a great way to start identifying performance pressures. And when someone discusses their performance pressures with you, their perception of you goes up, doesn't it? You're not just an order taker. You're someone who might be able to help them with one of their big problems, and that's exactly what you want. That's the key to performance pressures. We never stop gathering information about them. We never stop verifying it, because it gives us something to talk to decision makers about in their business. And that's exactly what you want. The next element of this account positioning with executives is their perception of you as a program manager or portfolio manager. What value do they think you bring to the organization? The lowest position, and this is where you'll start if you come in new to an organization, or if you're a consultant coming into a new client for the first time, is they think you're an order taker. They think you're like that person at the McDonald's drive-in window, and they drive up and say, yes, a burger and 2 orders of fries, please. And they're not expecting any feedback. They're not expecting you to say, do you really want 2 orders of fries? Isn't sitting just a bit too comfortable now? They don't expect feedback, or they're not interested in your ideas on what they should eat. They place orders, hence the name order taker. One level up, and it's not much of a step, is to treat you as a vendor. And they'll discuss specifications and features of what you do, but nothing more. So they're not just placing the order, they are discussing some of the tactical details of what you do, but they certainly don't let you into the strategic portion of their business or their personal situation. The next position up we call implementer, because you're a person that they're buying a pre-programmed sequence from. They may be buying a new accounting system, they may be buying a new customer history system, they may be buying a 5,000 square foot addition to the production area, but it's a pre-packaged sort of program you're going to do. They'll talk about the specifications, but they're not talking with you again about why they want it or how they're going to measure success. They're looking to buy this program from you, and there's a bunch of other people who could do the same program for them, and they see no particular value in yours. So this is not, again, a good position to work with executives from, because you're very contained. They're not really interested in your input except about how to build this 5,000 square foot structure a little cheaper, or do the systems work a little faster. That's all they're willing to talk with you about. The next step up is when you cross an important line. We call it the advisor level, and that's where they are willing to listen to your advice. What's the best way from a facilities management point of view to handle this expansion of the production facilities? They're looking to get your advice on that stuff because you have experience and expertise in doing the thing they want to do. So you're treated a bit better. Your input certainly is more valued. In fact, that's part of what they're buying from you, is advice about the right way to do it, the best practice for implementing a customer service system or launching a new product in the southwest of the United States. So an advisor sells expertise as well as the actual program itself. The highest level, and what we're shooting for, and you may never get to this level with everybody, is a strategic partnership where they see you on the same side of the desk they're on, and the two of you are working to achieve strategic results in their area of responsibility. And they want your advice, they want your ideas, they want you to challenge their ideas, because they're looking for a partnership kind of relationship where you can help them get to where they want to get. Okay, we have those 6 buying perceptions of us, what they think we can do for them. And we know some performance pressures, and we've identified the decision makers, and this is a mound of information we are continuously updating as performance pressures change, as people get promoted or demoted, or as decision makers change based on particular achievements they have delivered. So we have an inventory for each person. We've got some notes about our position, some notes about performance pressures, and some notes about what achievements we could place on their performance pressure. So that's the account management stuff we are dealing with. The next part of the data we want to maintain about these decision makers is their psychological type. So we know how to deal with them. We know the right way to present ideas. We know the right way to ask for decisions and support. And I promise you, it's not the same for everybody, and you can be incredibly effective with some people who frankly have the same personality type you do. And you can be very ineffective with people who have very different personality types, because you don't recognize the difference and you think they want to hear the information in the same way you do, and that is a very bad assumption. People who are successful in this role, dealing with multiple stakeholders, know how to handle people and handle them differently. And that's the key to this portfolio or program manager job. Let's get into the details. To type people's personalities, we're going to use some of the research based on the Myers-Briggs tautology of personality types, and there are 16 types. We're also going to use some other research about how I identify what type a person is, and still a third body about what's the best way to communicate with them. Now, we have a whole course devoted to this stuff which covers all 16 types, and here we're going to deal just with the shorthand among those personality types most prevalent in upper management. If you start to make very good use of these ideas, and you will, you can take the whole 203 course, which covers all of it. Let's get into the most prominent types we see in our executive decision makers. All right, let's quickly summarize the 4 types, and this is the way we start off classifying or typing people. We have NF people, who are intuitive feelers, and as a very shorthand that would make any psychologist vomit, NF types are human resources type people. They are concerned about people's feelings and whose feelings are being hurt, so they're very concerned at that level. Their energy comes from that. Talking to those people about accounting data is not going to get them on your side. Talking about the impact of a project on people and how they'll feel about their jobs and what sort of satisfaction they bring home, that's what's going to get a good response from the NF type. The NF, or human resources type, we see in upper management, but not in large numbers or large proportions. What is much more common is the intuitive thinker, who is a big picture person, sees the end result, is not interested in the details, quickly bored with the detail, but is delighted when you can talk with them at their level, because most people can't. So we're looking for to identify this NT type, intuitive thinker, and then we know our presentation to them has got to be a big picture end results. Let's get on with the action type presentation. All right, we've talked about the first 2 temperaments, both of which are intuitive, N, feelers for the personnel type or human resources type, and NT for the big picture conceptualizers. The third of the temperaments is the most frequently occurring in upper management, and it's the SJ temperament, or sensing judgers. These are people who are the guardians of procedure. They are very detail oriented. They want to be sure everything is following written procedure. That's very important to them, and it should be important to you when you deal with them. We don't want to give the same presentation to an SJ that we would give to an NT type, because they're going to think you're a loose cannon. Where's the procedure? Where's the documentation? With an NT big picture thinker, we would ask for a decision right on the spot, because they're very comfortable doing that. With an SJ type, we would be providing documentation and saying, can I contact you in a week for your decision? And that's what they're comfortable with. So that's the SJ type. It is the most prevalent in upper management, and if you're an SJ, you're going to fit in very nicely. If you're not, you need to adapt your style to fit the SJs, because that temperament is the most frequently occurring. The last of the temperaments is the SP, sensing perceiver. And again, an awful shorthand, don't ever use this with somebody in the psychology profession, but the SP are your sales types. They're very up, they're very action oriented, they're not interested in a lot of detail. They're also not interested in the big picture. What they're interested in is action, and doing things, and making sales calls, and contacting customers. And when they rise to decision-making levels, executive decision-making levels, we have to quickly recognize the SP type and then give them information in the ways they like to consume it. 4 types: NF, human resources; NT, big picture, that could be an IT project manager or analyst; SJ is an accounting type, procedure oriented; and the SP is a sales type, action oriented. Those are the 4 temperaments, and we'll use those to classify our executives. We talked about 4 temperaments, and now we can condense the field a little bit, because there's an unhappy executive right there. We can condense the field a little bit and talk about 2 SJ types. Those are those traditionalists, procedure bound, want to see the documentation, want to see the numbers. And one of them is an introverted SJ, and the other is an extroverted SJ. Now, don't think through your common definitions of introverted and extroverted. Let's talk about a bit more useful definitions. Extroverted people get their energy from dealing with people, from the outside world. These people talk a lot. Someone might come to mind right in front of you as the extroverted type. They talk a lot. They think while they're talking. An extrovert doesn't pause to think about what to say next. An extrovert just rolls right into it. And an extrovert can cover 15 different subjects in a 10-minute conversation, smoothly rolling from one to another as they click on the different slides in their brain. The extroverts are action-oriented. Extroverts like to deal with other extroverts. So you need to adapt your style a little bit when you encounter an extrovert. But an extroverted SJ is still an SJ. So they may talk a lot, they may have different ideas, but they still want to see the data. The extroverted SJ is much more comfortable making a decision in the first meeting. The other type of SJ is introverted, and those are people who get their energy from what happens inside their brain. They are much more careful. There are more pauses as they stop to think about what to say next. They're not the ever-running mouth that the extrovert is. The introverted SJ still wants to see the details, wants to see the numbers, but when they talk with you, they will be stopping to think, and that's your real key, that you have the introvert when they stop to think, and they do not want to be pushed to make a decision in that first meeting. You should never even try. You present the data, you leave them the information, maybe even better, you've sent it to them beforehand, and these are the people, the introverted SJ, that you say, I'll talk to you next week, give you a chance to think about this, and they appreciate that. Because if you ask for a decision today, it's going to be no. All right, now let's talk about the NTs, and we have both an extroverted NT and an introverted NT. And in combination, those two may be 20%, 22% of senior management, but a very important 22%. The introverted NT is your mastermind. They have all the intuitive traits of thinking before they speak and being more focused on the data. But these masterminds are the ones that come up with the brilliant plan and scheme to accomplish all the company's objectives, and they do it in one big step and present you the final result. They're the mastermind types. You have to wait sometimes for to get this masterpiece, but they are the ones who are doing all the complex thinking to put together, as an example, long-term corporate strategies. Okay, we've talked about the introverted NT. The mastermind comes up with these big plans. Not a lot of interest in interpersonal dealings or group decision making, but they plan the big picture and do it extraordinarily well. The next type of NT is your grand marshal. These are your extroverted NTs. These are the ones who lead people. People naturally follow them. They're very comfortable thinking on their feet, responding to problems on the fly. They conceptualize things very, very quickly. And these are your charismatic, dynamic leaders that head many organizations. And you know, if you're dealing with an extrovert, you've got to be able to think big and fast. And if you have an NT, they're also conceptualizing the big picture. They don't want to hear details. So you have to adapt your style to the extroverted NT. Now, in the exercises with this module, you'll have some video to watch where you identify what type you think these executives are, and then you have some reading, and then you'll plan what communication strategy you should use with each of these types. That's how we'll make this an operational technique. And while you're constantly assessing people and reassessing decision makers, once you've typed them accurately, that stuff doesn't change. So you can use your plan for each of these individuals, usually for as long as you deal with them. All this information we have gathered, we need to have another way to organize it, and that is using the echelons of achievement. So we're hearing about performance pressures from all levels of decision maker. We're trying to match those with a business achievement that would relieve that performance pressure. And we need to sort all this stuff out because all achievements are not equal. Some achievements will be more strategic. Those are the ones we want to talk to senior management about. Some achievements will be very local within a department, and we'll talk to the department supervisor about those, but probably not talk any higher. So we need to be able to categorize all of the achievements and performance pressures into the various echelons. Let's go through and talk about each of the echelons by itself. Okay, we have a number of achievement echelons, and the biggest one, the highest one if you will, the one people crow about, is the external or customer echelon. That's the highest level of achievement because we measure it in the outside world. Those are achievements like 90% of our customers are repeat customers in the 6 months after they make their initial purchase. Now that's an achievement we are measuring in the outside world. We're measuring customer behavior, and that is obviously extremely significant to have improvement in those external or customer level echelon achievements. So those are the ones we talk to senior management about. One level down from that are organizational achievements, and that's where we improve the profitability by 6%, sales increased by 20%. Those are organizational achievements. Now, some of those external achievements would help us do that, but we measure the organizational achievements in terms of organizational level performance, not in the outside world. One level down from that is cross-functional achievements, and that is, as an example, less than 2% of our shipments go to the wrong address because the customer database is updated every 23 hours. That would be a cross-functional result between the people maintaining the customer data and the people actually shipping. So it's not measured in the outside world or at the organizational level. It's measured between functional areas in the organization. Next level down is functional achievement, and that might be something like we reduce our cost per customer inquiry from $4.27 to $3.19. That's measured within a functional area. That's a functional echelon achievement. Next level down is the feature echelon, and that might be 6 months of customer history on one data screen. And that's just a feature of a system, as an example. Or it could be the feature of a new office building we're building. Every floor has 7 water fountains. That's a feature. When I'm in a position to discuss external customer and organizational echelon achievements with senior management, I've got a partnership position because they're willing to listen to me on those issues of organizational significance. If I can't get a meeting with the executives, if all they do is cluck and clutter around, then I know I'm not at the partnership level with them. So what kind of achievements I talk to people about is tied very closely, as you can see from the chart, to what their perception of me is. And if all they're talking to me about is getting 6 months of customer history on the same data entry screen, or having 7 water fountains on each floor in the new building, I know that I am down at the order taker or commodity level. They're just not interested in my influence or decision making. I think you can also see how these echelons fit into the achievement network design that we talked about in the first module. If I'm talking to the senior executive in an organization about improving our market share, that's in the customer and external area, and I probably would look down then, come down a level and say, what organizational level achievements do I need to support that external echelon achievement? And I might come up with things like lower prices, improved customer service, better product quality. I need those organizational achievements to support that external customer achievement of improving market share. And then I would drop down and say, okay, to get that cost reduction, I need achievements at the functional level to improve cost efficiencies and eliminate waste. And I may need 3 or 4 functional level achievements to support that organizational level achievement of cost reduction. So you see how I'm slotting these performance pressures in my echelon structure, and then as I get more conversation about the program, I'm filling in the gaps so I have a full achievement network. So the echelons lead me to my program achievement network. We've got some exercises at the end of this module, give you a chance to practice all of this stuff on a case study and build your own database, which you'll use through the rest of the course because you'll be dealing with these same very difficult people.